It is time to continue the series with a new episode where I show you some useful electronics that I got from AliExpress. This is the second video in the series and I will show you 8 gadgets that might be interesting to you. I bought a stepper motor controller, mechanical and magnetic encoders, Peltier coolers, a power supply and a few other gadgets that might be useful in your toolkit as well. First, let's start with the TEC1 25506K10 Peltier cooler. This Peltier cooler is somewhat special because instead of the usual 40mm x 40mm size, one of its edges is 80mm long. This results in a larger cooled area. Consequently, twice as large an area to be cooled as well. It can produce up to 60 degrees of temperature difference between the hot side and the cold side, and as usual, there is a trade-off between the temperature difference and the amount of heat that the Peltier cooler can pump from its cold side to its hot side. The rated voltage of the device is 30.5 volts and the rated maximum current is 6 amperes. Based on these parameters, it seems as if it were two TEC1 12706 devices connected in series. I could not find any good information on the Qmax of the module, but based on the previous assumption, the device is able to pump around 100 to 110 watts of heat from its cold side to its hot side. Since these coolers are never operated at their maximum rating, after a little back-of-the-envelope calculation, in ideal conditions, the device could transfer 40 watts of heat, while the temperature difference between the cold side and the hot side is around 40 degrees Celsius. This would produce about 120 watts of joule heat. So the device's hot side should be cooled with something that can get rid of at least 160 watts of heat to allow ideal operation. Probably water cooling is the best solution. I brought you another Peltier cooler that is doubled in thickness instead of length. This is the TEC2 19008 multi-stage Peltier cooler. I used a little weaker version of this for my cloud chamber, the TEC2 19006 module. It is basically two Peltier coolers stacked together in one package. With this device, you don't need to worry about achieving a good balance between the two Peltier coolers when you stack them. Just supply the device with the necessary power and let it work. It can accept up to 8 amperes of current and its maximum rated voltage is 16 volts. The maximum cooling power is 45 watts. What is more interesting is that the temperature difference between the cold side and the hot side is about 80 degrees. So with a well-cooled hot side and minimum heat introduced to the cold side, reaching below minus 30 degrees Celsius or even minus 40 degrees Celsius should not be an issue. As with all Peltier coolers, there is always a trade-off between the amount of heat moved from the cold side to the hot side and the achievable temperature difference between the two sides. So you either can go very cold or move heat, but not both at the same time. This device can help reaching a bit colder temperatures while maintaining the usual 40mm x 40mm footprint and having just a single pair of supply cables. It is really ideal for building DIY cloud chambers. Check out mine. Let's move on to the next item, which is in a different application area. The next unit is the VX Studio PD Power Mini V1 Buck adjustable power supply. This is another interesting USB PD power supply. Instead of using the PPS function, like the previously introduced power monitor from the same manufacturer, this one uses a built-in buck converter based on the SCT2450 chip. This chip can accept up to 36 volts of input voltage and can provide up to 5 amps of continuous output current. According to the datasheet of the device, we can get 1 to 20 volt output voltage and up to 3 amps current, and the manufacturer emphasizes that maintaining 3 amp current draw continuously requires an active cooling. It is worth noticing that while the primary way of feeding the circuit is via a proper USB-C cable, the manufacturer provides a female DC terminal to USB-C adapter, which allows us to supply 24 volt from a power adapter. Also, you might wonder where the 24 volt comes from a USB power adapter, but the USB PD 3.1 EPR protocol allows 24 volt output. Both the output voltage and the output current can be adjusted with 0.001 steps. However, the accuracy of the output voltage is 10 mV and the accuracy of the output current is 2 mA. Yet, these are significantly better step sizes than the PPS, because instead of doing PPS communication, here, a real switching converter does the heavy lifting. So the circuit controls the buck converter to achieve the desired output. The brain of the circuit is a CH32 X035 microcontroller, which might be familiar to you from my previous 100 watt USB PPS power supply project. Here, the chip does the USB PD communication and manages the buttons and display to allow user interaction, and it also controls the buck converter. There is a small OLED display on the device and 4 buttons. The 4 buttons allow navigation on the display, and one of these buttons is solely dedicated to enabling and disabling the output power. The menu structure is simple. There are 5 memory slots where the user can store voltage and current settings. The device seems to remember these even after power cycling. The settings are easy to modify. Long pressing the plus or the minus button enters edit mode. Pressing the S button moves the cursor over the next digit, and short pressing the plus or the minus button changes the highlighted digit. Once the desired values are set, the user can exit by long pressing the S button. Further, device-specific settings can be adjusted in the settings menu that can be reached by long pressing the S button on the main screen. The output power is provided via a 4-pin 3.81mm screw terminal, and there is a separate aux power output of 5V and 300mA that is available via 2x4 male header pins. The main output has both overcurrent and short circuit protection, whereas the auxiliary 5V has only short circuit protection. The device can even be controlled from a computer, but in that case, the computer must have a USB output that is able to deliver the required power. Since we are already discussing power-related devices, let's look at the next item, which is a 5.5V overvoltage protection circuit. This is a tiny circuit based on the AW33905 chip, which is an overvoltage protection load switch. The chip features an ultra-low resistance NFET load switch. When the input voltage exceeds the OVP threshold, the switch is turned off promptly within 50 nanoseconds to protect the connected device. The chip is able to conduct up to 5 amperes continuously. The specific version I have turns off about 5.5 volts. It is ideal to protect microcontrollers that operate at 5 volt. They typically allow a ±10% voltage swing around 5 volt, so cutting off the power just above the 10% seems okay. Once the input voltage exceeds the OVP threshold, the onboard red LED turns on. This indicates that the threshold has been reached. To unlock the device, the voltage should be decreased to roughly 5.3 volts or below. It is a tiny and cheap device, but it is worth embedding in your projects if there are sensitive components in it. Also, it is worth noticing that this circuit exists in many different voltage rating, so you can pick the one that is suitable for your application. Next, let's look at this fun device, which is still somewhat power related. It is another USB-C lithium battery charger with a digital display. In the previous AliExpress video, I already showed some lithium battery related stuff, but I keep finding new ones, so here is another interesting one. This device is made for single 3.7V lithium cells, ideal for 18650 batteries or those typical 3.7V LiPo pouch batteries. Charging can be done through a USB-C port, which allows a bit more than 500mA of charging current. The USB-C port on the PCB is power only, so there is no communication or voltage negotiation done by the device. The charging is controlled by a chip marked C60H, and there is a small microcontroller GX72116 on the PCB as well. If my detective work is right, this is an 8-bit microcontroller. It is probably used for driving the display based on the charge state of the battery. The device is most probably recycled because it seems a bit used, and there are some additional wires on the PCB, and some of them were snipped. I suspect that these units were recycled from vapes. The two obvious wires are the red and the black, which are used for charging the battery. They are marked with B+ and B- on the board. However, there are two additional silver wires marked with O+ and O-, and three others, red, blue and black, M+, M0, M-, in a group whose role is not entirely certain. But guess what? Vapes usually have built-in airflow sensors that are used to detect when the user tries to inhale the fumes. These microphone-looking devices detect airflow and close the circuit when the airflow occurs. In vapes, this action is used to turn on the heating coils to produce the fumes. To produce these fumes, a high-temperature source is needed. This is achieved by running current through coils, often called atomizer. So the leftover two silver wires marked with O+ and O- are probably used for this purpose. The O- pin is directly connected to the battery's negative pole, and the O+ pin goes to an A5SHB high-side MOSFET's drain pin. Then, this MOSFET source pin is connected to the battery's positive pole. When the M0 pin is touched, even with bare fingers, the device gets activated. The display turns on and shows the battery charge, and a bit later the vape cartridge percentage. And at the same time, it also activates the MOSFET and the battery voltage appears between the O+ and O- pins. The output is controlled by the microcontroller, and it is not possible to keep the O+ under voltage indefinitely. The voltage briefly appears on the output and then slowly decays. So, the vape part is not really usable, but the rest of the circuit, the charger, and the status indicator part is quite useful. The next product is a very useful one, a dual-shaft rotary encoder. This is not an extremely outstanding product, but it can be very useful in certain situations. In some projects where I use rotary encoders to change values, it could come in handy if I could have a fine and coarse adjustment possibility. Sure, it can be done with a single rotary encoder and by some software tricks and so on, but sometimes we want a more mechanical approach because it feels better or safer. So this encoder has two shafts, an inner and an outer one. Each shafts have their rings that makes the adjustment easier. The encoder also has a switch, so actually it has 3 options embedded, 2 encoders and a switch. It has 8 pins, 3 for each encoders and 2 for the switch. The only issue with the pin arrangement is that 5 pins are on the same side of the encoder, and some of these pins are overlapping, so it is not possible to use this kind of encoder in a breadboard. But one can easily fabricate a breakout board made of a perf board or make a custom PCB for it. I created a super simple demo code for the device using an Arduino Nano. The user can increase the number on a small OLED display using the encoder. The top ring allows a finer, and the bottom ring allows a coarser adjustment. The project can be a good drop-in sketch for larger projects where a similar encoder should be treated. Soon, I will also release a PCB for these encoders to make it easier to plug them into breadboards and circuit boards. And since we are looking at encoders, let me show you the MT6701 differential hall magnetic encoder. You might already well know the AS5600 magnetic encoder, and maybe you know about it from me because I have several videos on it, and one of the most popular AS5600 videos on YouTube is mine. This encoder is fairly similar, but it comes with more features. It has the same basic principles as the AS5600. Inside the chip, there are 4 Hall effect sensors distributed at 90 degrees apart. The chip is used with a special magnet that is radially or diametrically magnetized, so its south and north are not the top and the bottom of the magnet, but one half and the other. When the magnet is placed over the chip, the 4 Hall sensors feel different magnetic fields. The resulting output signal of the 4 Hall sensors together is converted to an angle which represents the position of the magnet. The output signal, depending on the used communication protocol, can be a 14-bit binary code, PWM signal, analog voltage, ABZ signal, or UVW signal. In addition to the typical encoder operation, the encoder can also be used as a push button. The chip is prepared to be able to handle and interpret the different distances between the encoder chip and the magnet according to the datasheet. The chip has a built-in function for this, and one can program a Z threshold which can be used to interpret the distance changes as a button press. This is useful when the chip is used in encoders. The chip can both read the rotation of the encoder knob and the press of the knob. Unfortunately, the chip on this module does not support this option, but I'm already working on a solution. I will also soon release a very detailed review video of this encoder with some cool use cases. Finally, let's look at a stepper motor related product, the SMC05 stepper motor or servo motor controller. This device allows you to generate driving signals for stepper motors or servo motors. I test and demonstrate the product with a stepper motor, so I will focus on the stepper motor related operation. As I said, the device is a signal generator, so it will still need a stepper motor driver that interprets the signals and powers the stepper motor. In my demo, I use it with a TB6600 stepper motor driver and the NEMA 17 stepper motor that drives a ball screw-based linear actuator. In my opinion, this is a perfect device for those who want to operate a simple stepper motor-based mechanism without involving microcontrollers and programming. A typical approach would be to use an Arduino Nano, program it using the Excel stepper library, and then let it do its thing. But for simple mechanisms, this could be too much extra work and people might get discouraged. So, with this device, we can program simple operations and drive the stepper motor accordingly. The device has a 1.8-inch color display that allows the user to configure the device and the program that drives the stepper motor. It comes with 20 pre-programmed motion and behavior patterns. One can drive the stepper motor continuously while a button is kept pressed or until it is pressed again. One can set a certain number of pulses that the motor should travel, and this can even be done in an oscillating manner so that the motor rotates back and forth. We can even add up to 4 limit switches to the system and make the motor travel between them. The list is long, and I would not spend hours explaining them. Instead, I warmly recommend reading the datasheet where all these patterns are explained. The device should be powered with voltage sources between 12 volt and 24 volt. If you don't have a power supply around, but you have a USB PD adapter, then you could get the previously introduced power supply circuit and use it for powering this module. The supply 24 volt is also available on the output side of the device. Ideally, this 24 volt output should be used to power the external devices such as the stepper motor driver, the limit switches, or other peripherals. Just make sure that the power supply can provide enough current. As I mentioned, it is possible to add up to 4 limit switches to the controller. They should be NPN, normally open switches, and they should be able to tolerate 24 volts. Typically, proximity switches are preferred. We can also add external buttons for run, direction, and stop functions. They should also be 24 volt compatible. Finally, there are 4 output channels, O1 to O4, which can be used to drive indicator lights, solenoid valves, and so on. The main display shows the selected program and the status of the operation. Speed, number of pulses, outputs, limit switches, everything can be accessed from the display. The buttons on the left side of the device are self-explanatory: forward, reverse, set or exit, and confirm. On the right side, the rotary encoder is used for navigation or modifying values, and the button under it is used for starting and stopping the motion. We can enter the menu with the set button. This brings us to a menu with 3 items. The system allows us to configure the controller, the motor allows us to adjust the motor parameters, and the action menu is where we can select the program and adjust its parameters. The chapter 3 of the datasheet describes each mode and parameter very clearly. With a dedicated USB to TTL module, which I don't have, one can even connect the device to a computer. This allows communication and firmware update functions. The manufacturer provides the communication protocol in the datasheet, so one can develop custom software for it that sends the required commands and parameters to the device. Furthermore, one can get a Bluetooth module for this controller and control it via an app on a mobile phone. So this was the last product in this video. If you want to get any of these products, please use the affiliate links in the video description. It helps me to buy gadgets for the next video. Also, if you like these videos, please consider becoming a channel member. Your support helps me to produce more videos. I wrote a detailed article about these gadgets. There are extra pictures, useful links, and so on, so make sure you visit my website. I hope you like this video, I hope you learned something, and see you in the next video.